around you. You're ready to transition, and everybody's feeling good about it. It's good. It's all good.
And the only thing he asked is that we hold him to his last breath. And then he closed his eyes. And about an hour later, he was gone.
I thought I was going to be prepared for his passing, and I have to say, all the preparation and all the anticipatory grief that I did and I thought I did, didn't do it. It just doesn't do it.
Mama? Papa? Can you hear me now? Welcome to the launch of the Grief Dialogues. As most of you know, I'm Elizabeth Copeland, and this is my vision. And all of you and all of the people who have worked on this show tirelessly are helping this vision come true. This tonight's show is dedicated to a number of people living and those who have gone before us. And at this moment, I would like just to take a moment to thank my mother and my father and all our mothers and fathers in this audience and those who have gone before us. And thank you for bringing us here today. As you can tell from the program, and I have a bit of a cold, I'm really not crying through every whole thing. As you can tell from the program tonight, by the way, you do not get to leave the theater until you have memorized every person's name in the program. As you can see from the program, it is packed with the people who made tonight possible. 99% of those people donated their time and their talents to this project and this evening tonight. Yes. The video that you just saw is the opening on the website, The Grief Dialogues, that was so expertly crafted by our digital strategist, Gigi Michaels, who I hope you have an opportunity to speak to. She's an amazing, talented woman. And Steve Stoley, who interviewed those people and brought out the most precious stories that we could share with you tonight. And I know there are people in the room who resonated with those individual stories. I know I did. I would also like to tell you that this project is only 1 year old. On this stage, about a year to the day, my play, Hospice's Love Story, made its debut as part of the Island Theater 10-Minute Play Festival. When that play was performed, I had more people coming to me later and saying, I love that play, let me tell you about my mother's death. Let me tell you about something that happened to me. And the more I heard their stories, the more I realized the importance of our sharing our stories and the fact that our stories can change other people's lives. I also want to acknowledge the serendipitous nature of this project. It seems like every time I turn around, another door opens for me. And this project becomes bigger and more important and has more meaning. And I'm just going to tell you one quick story. The buttons that you saw outside, the white buttons that had the picture of the girl with the pink Band-Aid, Most of you who know my sister Mary Pullman know that that's her artwork. Those buttons I ordered 3 weeks ago. On Monday, I was concerned that they had not arrived. I looked on my online order to find out that I had not placed the order correctly, and that I had indeed only asked for standard production time and standard shipping. I called imprint.com, told them my plight. They Federal Expressed those buttons to me. I received them yesterday, along with the bill of no extra charge. Tonight is made possible in large part by the members of the Advisory Council. Fortunately, I've been in marketing and public relations long enough to know you don't do this by yourself. And starting last fall, I started to assemble an advisory council. And I hope you take a minute or two over the next few days and look at our website and see all the amazing people who are part of the advisory council. There are theaters all over the country just waiting to have this show. Here tonight, I want to acknowledge a few. You don't have to bring up the house lights, but when you see these people, please, at the reception, please thank them for me. On the advisory council here tonight are Marit Kruger, Dan Rogers, Sally McLaughlin, Diana Jackson, Karen Vargas, Professor Taryn Lindhorst, Wesley Fouget, Carla Rose Fisher, Mark Nichols, and Steve Stoley. Could you please thank them for me, because so tonight, what you are about to see is not really a production. It's mostly a production. But we will stop along the way to tell you a few things that normally when we do the grief dialogues on stages across this country, we will have one theatrical piece or theater piece after a play, a piece of film, a podcast perhaps, but it'll all be theater. Tonight we're going to fill you in a little bit along the way so that you understand what we're trying to do, and in the hopes that perhaps if you see a better way, you can let me know. And before we get started with the next part, I have special credit to some angels that in the last, 2 weeks, all the way down to 24 hours, have helped me make this show possible. Mark Nichols, without whom I really wouldn't be here today. Steve Stoley, who was here at the very beginning, and who kind of held my hand through it when I think sometimes even he thought we couldn't pull this off. Beth Bayless, who's been my right-hand person for a very long time, at least the last 6 months. Amy Stam, who in the last 48 hours has somehow managed to work 4 jobs and still smile. Jane Martin, who is always the one to decorate a lobby with such grace and style. And Blair Nichols, who literally came in at the last minute to help me with all those gazillion other things. There are many others, I know. I probably forgot someone. I truly apologize if I did. Please remind me afterwards, will you? So this is the theater part of it, okay? The purpose tonight, my purpose tonight, is not to make you sad. My purpose tonight is to make you aware. And I'm going to read a quote from a wonderful book called When Breath Becomes Air. Be ready, be seated, see what courage sounds like. See how brave it is to reveal yourself in this way. But above all, see what it is to live, to truly live. As I mentioned, 1 year ago, almost to the day, Hospice had its debut here on the Island Theater stage, 10-minute play festival in good old performing arts. And in that year, it received numerous readings, production in Sedona, Arizona, and most recently, it enjoyed a 6-week run at the Los Angeles, with the group rep at the Lonnie Chapman Theater. And there, I had the extreme pleasure of having Kevin Dobson as my producer. Now, you may recognize Kevin from One Life to Live and from Knots Landing. The one I remember most is Kevin on Kojak. You see, I had quite the crush on Kevin in Kojak. But what you may not know, besides his wonderful acting and directing and producing talents, he was also a military policeman for 7 years in the Army and served in Vietnam. He is very active in veterans' causes, and he is the chairman of the SAG-AFTRA Military Personnel and Family Committee. Please welcome Kevin Dobson.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I had a crush on me too. That was outrageous. So look! You know, it was really a lot of fun, and working with people like Telly Savalas. And, you know, talk about grief. I worked on Knots Landing for 10 years, working with those women. Because, there were grief dialogues there, I'll tell you that. Michelle Lee, Donna Mills, Joan Van Ark. They came with a full package, I'll tell you that. It was a lot of fun. You know, Elizabeth spoke about serendipity. I belong to a theater group in Los Angeles called the Repertory Theater. We started in 1972, and then it grew. It's still going. I used to sleep on the floor of the place. That's another story. But I put out a national competition for one-act plays, 10 minutes, you know, of all types. And at first, it was the first time we as a theater did it, and the first 2 months we received like 4 scripts. And then suddenly there was 160. It was just loaded, and next year it'll be even more. So we chose to do 9 one-act plays. And out of those 160, everybody kept referring to this hospice thing. And it was really good. And I finally got to read it, and it just jumped off the page. So we produced these 9 shows, hospice being the best one that we did. Hospice, a love story. It was really intriguing, emotional. When I first heard it done in production, it was very sensitive and quite real and identifiable. I think we all go through phases of this throughout our life. I remember when I lost my mom, I had a friend say, how do you feel? Well, you may feel that way now, but about 6 months from now, you'll be driving on the freeway and it'll hit. Oh, okay. I mean, almost to the day, I'm driving on the freeway, I just drove off the freeway. Oh my God, how do I deal with this? Went home, talked to my wife Susan about it and stuff, you know. And that was the key. Instead of keeping it in, talk about it. Get it out. Relate to somebody. We all have a lot of this in common, you know, but we need to hear about it from one another, you know. But I love this play. I was telling a friend of mine who's the president of the San Fernando Valley Business Alliance, and we put on a couple of fairs throughout the year. One is Hire a Vet. We're very involved in veteran issues. And another is a health fair called HealthX. And it brings a lot of people, a lot of businesses to it. And they want to put this up, and that's going to happen in November. So we're going to take this play and put it up again in North Hollywood, in the Valley. And it's going to be quite attractive, and we're going to extend it and tell more of this story. Because this story needs to get out. It's not that it's a secret, but it needs to spread. We need to talk about it. So without listening to what I have to say, I'd like to introduce you to the words of Elizabeth Copeland, which I love. Thank you so much for these words. It's an incredible talent to have that ability to sit down and put words like this together. They mean something not only to me, but to the world. At this time, I'd like to introduce Hospice, a Love Story.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 42 years since my last confession.
Sorry, I've missed a few appointments, Doctor.
Yes, well, I'm here, so let's make the most of it. I'm supposed to be sorry for my sins, right? Guess I should have Googled the topic.
I killed my mother.
And for that, I'm truly sorry. Well, no, I'm not truly sorry. God abandoned her. There was no God in that room. Oh, God. I should have never come. I don't remember how to do this confession thing. When I was younger, I kept a list of my sins taped to the bedroom door, just so I would have something to say to the priest. Of course, I wrote things down, like I sassed my mother 3 times. After my sister was born, I wrote I had anger and lust at least 7 times. 1 lust for each day of the week. I remember the nuns taught us lust meant thoughtlessness and self-love. They never said anything about sex and adultery. Apparently, sex and adultery were considered the adult versions of lust. All I cared about was getting rid of my interloper sister. And goddamn my sister. Mom was in excruciating pain.
Dr. Turner, I didn't actually kill Mom, but I helped. No, I didn't help. So, yeah, I killed my mother.
I wasn't really going to kill her, but all was lost.
My sister Ann was making all the decisions about Mom's health care and when to bring in hospice. And all she talked about was giving Mom morphine. I think Ann just wanted
to
get on with her
my
life.
life. Then my sister asks our mom,
Do you want to die?
oh, all the idiotic questions. How the hell was she supposed to answer? You had already performed the last rites, Father. The church would never forgive her if she said yes. Let's hurry it up. Or, I've changed my mind. My sister was always doing stupid stuff. I remember the time we got Skipper dolls for Christmas. Betsy cut her doll's hair. Tells me in her sickly, sweet 3-year-old voice, Skipper's hair will grow back. Oh, the look on Betsy's face when I said it would never grow back. Is there a statute of limitations on what I confess? Because I should add, I was kind of mean to my sister when she was little. You see, all I would do is yell, Mom! And then all Mom would do was yell, Betsy! And my little sister would run back to her room in tears. Mom just assumed I was right and Betsy was wrong. My poor sister. I don't know why I did it. Because she wasn't really bothering me. It was a lie. I also lied this week, Father. You see, Betsy made me agree I would not give Mom any more morphine.
We were supposed to go to Disneyland. That was the plan anyway. We loved all the fantasy and the rides and the silliness. Thought it would make us forget about Mom's illness. She was in remission, you see. then her cancer came back. We still joked about going because it was on the calendar. Mom lived and died by that calendar. Oh my God. I can't believe I said that. I saw Mom's face, tear on her cheek, her hands clenched, you know? It's not fair. She lived a healthy life. I didn't want to see her in pain, but I felt by giving her morphine, we were hastening her death. We were giving up on her.
I told Betsy to give it up. Give up trying to make sense of all of it.
One day we went out to buy groceries. The local farmer was selling strawberries, and I bought a carton. Mom smelled them the moment we walked through the door. So I fed her strawberries. One strawberry. I cut it in quarters and fed it to her.
Betsy gave Mom a strawberry, but she spit it out, and it left a stain on the white sheets. The sheets smelled, it was gross.
We
never
always changed the sheets. I tried to make her comfortable. She liked this balloon I bought her. The flowers die, so I got her a balloon instead. She wasn't Irish, but the choices were get well, happy birthday, or it's a boy. I couldn't find speedy death. Oh God, we were so tired. Anne decided to lay out in the backyard. She said the sun would feel good on her back. I guess she fell asleep because the next door neighbor called. She thought Anne was dead. She watched her, said she watched her for over 20 minutes, and Anne never moved a muscle.
When Betsy woke me up, I rubbed my face. The artificial turf left an imprint on my cheek, and it hurt. Father, I did not kill my mother because I wanted to go to Disneyland. I killed her because she was dying. Sometimes Mom was in a lot of pain. We did sit-ups. Yeah.
Yes,
Sit-ups.
Mom
Mom loved
hated
them.
them.
It was a funny little routine Betsy and I did. Betsy climbed on the back of the hospital bed. I climbed over the quadrille into the bed and faced Mom. Then Anne crawled up the back of the bed and pushed Mom forward while I pulled Mom towards me. We then lowered her back down, and I would back out of the bed. Always got my damn legs stuck in the bed rail. And Mom laughed.
Anne looked silly.
When Mom laughed, it reminded me of the time Betsy wore her Batman costume to church. Betsy was not Batgirl, or even a Catwoman. She was Batman. The nuns loved her. Yes, they loved my sister. She was the cute one, the creative one.
Anne was the smart one. Good grades. Loved to read. Liked to go out for tea and little sandwiches with Mom and pretend she was all sophisticated.
Mom liked her best. Betsy made these adorable Mother's Day cards from scratch. She'd even write her own "I love you, Mom" poem. I spent 50 cents on a Hallmark card.
Mom and Ann were alike in so many ways. For one, they both liked tea shops. I liked McDonald's. I had one of the very first Big Macs.
You should have seen my little sister. We called her, well, it's no longer politically correct, but we called her our little blonde-headed miskin.
Mom designed paper dolls for Ann when she was little.
Our mom made the cutest flowery dresses for my sister. I got the bright red, empire-waisted tent dress. I looked like a popsicle.
I love my sister. How do I tell her I killed our mother?
I just gave Mom the prescribed dose of morphine. I didn't like seeing her in pain. I tried to talk about something else, so I asked Betsy, when we go to Disneyland, where's the first place you want to go?
And Ann started talking about Disneyland again. I couldn't believe it. And then out of my mouth comes a small world. I want to go to a small world. I even started humming it. And then Mom smiled.
Father, I appreciate your patience with me. Mom always said, when it came to the Catholic Church, we girls should just take what we want and leave the rest.
I have so many regrets. Death is so complicated, and there are so many unanswered questions we never thought to ask.
I have no regrets, Father. Oh, there were things I would have done differently in my life. For one thing, I would have tried to end Mom's pain sooner, but I have no regrets.
Anyway, just as Mom was falling asleep,
When
When
Betsy
Ann
turned her back, I gave Mom more morphine. It's okay, Mom. Sleep well.
then Mom fell asleep.
Thank you, Mama and Marilyn. Just to let you know that I had an opportunity to cast the show myself, and those were the two ladies I asked to do me the great honor of performing in my piece. And I know if you've come to the BPA often enough, you've seen Mama and you've seen Marilyn do some amazing work on the stage, and I just want to personally thank them right now for this amazing performance of my play. So thank you, Mama and Marilyn. This past year, I've had the privilege to also work on a book project, although in recent months, the Grief Dialogues has taken over my every waking moment and then some. So, but in the book project, I had the opportunity to read a wonderful piece by Ann Ellis. The piece is called Scone Girl, and she's going to read it for you tonight. The reason I like this piece so much is it gets to the heart of what I call ambiguous loss. Loss we don't always get to know all the answers to. Anne says that she wrote the piece to honor this girl and encourage others who might be struggling with the same issue. Please welcome Ann Ellis and the Scone Girl.
She was the reason we went to the Ashlands Farmers Market. The sweltering summer heat slammed into us as we walked from our car to find the Scone Girls booth. The Sunday before, our friends Don and Denise served up a delicious brunch of quiche, bacon, and the most heavenly scones we had ever tasted. My husband John fell in love with the savory herb scones, and I blissed out over the fairy-like ginger scones, winged, I kid you not, with sugar edges. Our compliments prompted Denise to tell us about the young woman who made the scones and her bakery. The farmer's market is open again on Tuesday, she said. You should stop by on your way out of town and take some home. And we agreed. I couldn't wait to load up our car with these treasures. I visualized warming them up in my oven in the mornings ahead and giving these gifts to our friends. They were that amazing. As we made our way through the colorful beauty of fresh produce, flowers, and the lively folk music in the market, we realized that after reaching the end of the main aisle, we had somehow missed the Scone Girls booth and decided to split up. I was greedily bagging up a few pints of berries at a fruit stand when I turned to see my husband walking towards me, almost as if in slow motion. His dear face said that something was terribly wrong. He leaned into me and whispered softly, "She's gone." "Who's gone?" I asked. "The girl. The girl who made the scones. Apparently, she took her own life on Sunday." Her booth was unrecognizable the first time we passed by, for good reason. It was camouflaged in grief. Upon entering it, the energy was thick, reeling, and disorienting. The 8x10 picture propped up next to some candles was that of a goddess, a laughing, 19-year-old, self-possessed young woman with dark hair and an old soul. I fumbled over the memorial book on the table under her lovely picture and feebly wrote words of comfort to her family. The memorial felt too premature somehow, too raw, like the red Willamette strawberries in my arms. She was there, I could feel her. I held my son and daughter's hands and openly wept as we walked back to our car past a giant cottonwood tree. We have to be so very kind to each other, I said. She was 19 years old. How could she not know how precious she was? This artist. I asked aloud, barely breathing through this panting moment. She was someone we never knew, but had experienced her essence, now alongside the cruel reality of her aching absence. There was no Taliban threatening her or shooting at her, and yet a bullet of sorts stilled this young heart. If I had 5 more minutes that Sunday morning, I would have picked up the phone and called that baker of magical scones the minute after eating them and told her that she was sunshine itself. Her heart an oven of perfection and her life a transcendent force for beauty, goodness, which it was. I would have thanked her for these gifts of deliciousness, placed a huge order, celebrated her, and tried to make her laugh, tell her to never stop, find out her secrets, and most importantly, encourage her to savor life's sweetness and to let the crumbs of doubt or fear just fall away. How could she not know how precious she was? My heart felt so pressed with the knowledge and sensation that this wasn't supposed to have happened. I don't know what all that means. I just know that she should have been there that Tuesday morning in her booth with her stones, shining.
So much, Anne. That piece is even more powerful hearing you read it than in my own mind, which was pretty dramatic as I read it. But I thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was extremely powerful. Thank you. For those of you who have not had the chance to go to the Grief Dialogues website, I hope you do so soon. On it, Gigi Michaels has allowed me to embrace just about every form of theatrical and entertainment and medium on that website, so that if you come there and you need someone to share a story with, or some resources, or some information, whether you want to read about it or hear about it, it's there. Our next piece is actually a podcast that you will find on the website. Kate Ruffing, 2 years ago, at the age of 38, became a widow. Kate is a good friend of ours, a fellow Bainbridge Island Museum of Art board member, and someone whose story of her husband's final days continue to cause me an opportunity to rejoice in my own life, while others did not have that opportunity. Kate has seized her husband's death as an opportunity to spread hope. In just a moment, you will hear the first of Kate Ruffing's podcasts. There will be more on the website in the coming months. I do want to say that this podcast was recorded by Steve Stoley. Kate could not be here tonight. She's actually in Africa with the Habitat for Humanity. And I'm also very happy to say she has found someone not to replace Jason, but someone who can stand beside her in this life's journey. And he's with her there in Africa. Kate told me to share the following. My hope is that through this project, people can find a way to authentically and transparently support each other through the stages and process of death and grief. Ladies and gentlemen, Kate Ruffing's podcast, which we call Grief Bursts.
I've heard a lot as a young widow, the people that blow off your grief with, "Oh, you are so young, you'll get married again soon." As if replacing my husband and our love that we shared is like going to the hardware store for a light bulb. When people ask me what my husband does, because I'm young, and why would he be dead, and I tell them that he's passed away, or just because I'm feeling a little bit snarky, I say, "Well, I'm married to a guardian angel." They respond, "What? You're so young. How did that happen?" I can tell you, I certainly didn't cause it, and I didn't want it to happen. The realest comment I encountered was, "Shit." That sucks. Yep, it does.
Now you know why we call it the grief burst. We kept it short. Next on the agenda is Police Talk by Susan Levy. I want to introduce this piece by telling you a little story about the most wonderful, generous, and kind next-door neighbors you could ever imagine. Bill and Joyce Osling were our neighbors since we moved there in 1987. We, being my husband, Scott Copeland, and I. They could not be here tonight, but they prepared something that they want me to share with you. On October 26, 2010, our son, Douglas M. Osling, was shot by a Bainbridge Island police officer. Our son made a 911 call to ask if 911 was an intelligent system. When the police arrived, the two officers were notified that he was mentally ill. Both parents said this to them. Neither officer involved had received crisis intervention team training or understood their policy manual, nor consulted with a CIT trained officer prior to attempting to contact our son. No officers attempted to aid our son, and we were denied access to him. Our son died alone by bleeding to death in his room. Now, if any of you know the Oslings, you know it didn't end there. And for the next several years, they persistently, doggedly, lovingly pursued in memory of their son to enact the Douglas M. Osling Act, which requires new full-time law enforcement officers to receive 8 hours of CIT training as part of the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. The talk that you're about to hear from Susan Levy was initially given to the first class of the police graduates who received this special training. Susan represented the families of the mentally ill. This presentation is based on her original talk. Please welcome Susan Levy.
It's over. Those were the 2 words my son's father spoke to me 7 years ago this week. I thought that meant our son was off the bridge and on his way to an awaiting hospital bed. As we were preparing to go be with him, my husband suggested I call him back and ask what over means. Just to appease him, I did. That's when the truth, the reality set in. Our son was dead. And me thinking that after 20 hours on a bridge in Spokane, having talked with the hospital psychiatry department, everyone agreed that all the police had to do was wait. But they didn't. On that horrific night and day, our son in his paranoia got up on a bridge. He couldn't even say who he was. And when the police finally learned his identity, it would be several hours before we, his immediate family, were contacted. Family, you know, they get in the way. In the early morning, we received a call from the Spokane Police Department. The only call we were to receive that day, even though they promised to keep us informed, to let us know what was going on. Even though we could have helped them more than they knew, we were just the family. Do not use violence, I pleaded. He is not a violent person. No weapons, no harm to another living soul. He told the officers of his fear of tasers, and yet tasers would later be used to deadly effect. That morning, a mental health professional was called to the bridge and asked if she had any ideas about the situation. Our son's case was just being transferred to that jurisdiction, and the paper was just out of the fax machine, probably sitting on someone's desk. What if some creative problem solving had been put into effect? What if they had called the second largest hospital in the state with a psychiatry department less than a mile away, as we the family had done? I believe it would have produced a different outcome. According to several recent studies, at least 25% of all fatal police encounters involve someone with mental illness. That's 1 in 4. The Treatment Advocacy Center places that number at closer to 50%. Think about it, 25 to 50%? In the context of police protests you've been hearing about in recent years, it all involves people with mental illness. So why don't we move significant resources so that policemen cannot be trained just 8 hours, but throughout their careers? Only then can we expect better treatment of mentally ill people in crisis. Our son was observed the night before riding his bicycle recklessly on a highway. And after several calls to 911, the state patrol arrived. Instead of taking him to the hospital where he clearly belonged and met every criteria, it was close to the end of the night shift, and the officer decided to drop him off at his father's home without even letting him know the circumstances. What was it that stopped that officer from taking our son to the hospital where he clearly belonged? The paperwork? The potential lack of treatment? We'll never know. But we do know that most likely he would not have been on the bridge the next night. For many years, we didn't know our son had mental illness because they didn't diagnose it in children. Just bad parenting, don't you know? But once we did, we flew into action and got him all the help that we could imagine. Yes, there were good years. Here was a young man with hopes and dreams. He went to college, and in his final summer, he worked as an assistant river ranger on the Snake River. He wanted to have a career with the U.S. Forest Service. In fact, he went to Spokane in large part to enroll in an EMT course. He had ridden with the EMTs in our town, and he could see himself doing it. You see, our son was someone you wanted to have around in case of an emergency. He was level-headed and focused. He knew what to do. Above all, he wanted to help people. So on this day, families want to applaud the training you've received. And 8 hours is a good start. But we hope you'll be mindful that families have hundreds of hours of on-the-job training. 8 hours can be a start to a partnership with families. But remember that even if our loved ones can't recognize us during a crisis, chances are we know that. We've been here before. Maybe you haven't, but we have. So to gain our trust, be curious. Ask questions. Do not patronize us. I know of one family whose son's name was revealed before they were ever told or consulted, or before a healthcare professional had been consulted, to see if there was a better way. This family's trust can't be rebuilt. Arrogance smashes trust. We understand that as you are enforcing the law, you're going to be making judgment calls like in our son's case. But not explaining your decisions in advance to the family is inexcusable. It violates trust. The trust you want and the trust we deserve. And your judgments as authorities have life and death consequences. When another police department called our police department for more information about our son, they were given an opinion about by an officer who only had hearsay knowledge. Because of his judgmental statements, plans on the other end were made, plans based on hearsay. He was an afraid young man, locked in a crisis with his disease. We hope that in the future, a protocol will be put into place to have the officers who do have firsthand knowledge but are off duty be called in case of an emergency. So, imagine yourself on a bridge, worn out after 20 hours, paranoid and confused. Imagine that plan A to get you down is out of a made-for-TV movie. Police shoot with a taser. And as you are falling from being stunned, another police officer rushes and grabs you down. And plan B? Well, there is no plan B. The taser missed. The officer still ran to a now even more frightened and terrorized ill person. Fight or flight? What would you have done in that state of mind? Our son, so afraid, hearing the taser whiz past him, watching the officer run toward him, turned and jumped into a river that was shallow that time of year. There are, of course, many things that gnaw at me from that day, and one of them is calling our son's final action a suicide, which is how the police had the media portray it. Another issue for me is that mistakes were made that day, and yet no one seemed to want to talk about it. When did taking action supersede waiting, doing nothing? Mistakes have life and death consequences, as everyone here knows. Acknowledge your mistakes, learn from them. It's surprising how few times families get asked, how could we have done this differently? Such a simple and powerful question. And here's the hope. We know that in mental health crises, no one has all the answers. Not the police, not the healthcare professionals, nor the family. But together, we have the best possible hope for a possible outcome. And yes, families do know their loved ones best. All people want to be normal, but their wiring and chemistry just isn't like yours and mine. They need our help, sometimes extraordinarily so. Once, after an incident, when my son was feeling better, I asked him how it felt to be in this dangerous situation, like on a bridge. What, I asked, did you want me to tell people who were trying to help you? He answered thoughtfully, if I'm ever in a place where I shouldn't be, like on a bridge, though I'll try not to be, please tell them I don't want to die. I just don't know how to get down. I need their help. My hope and prayer for you is that you'll have the wisdom and the patience to help our loved ones get down. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, tonight you are witnessing courage. The men and women who are on this stage tonight are sharing very powerful personal stories. Stories that can change lives. And I'd like to just take a moment to applaud Susan Levy's courage and wisdom and strength for being up here tonight and sharing this story one more time for all of us to learn. Thank you. When the Oslings came over to our house yesterday to share what they would like me to say, they did also want to add that there's still more to be done. As Susan mentioned, there is more hours that should be mandated in the training, more frequent, etc. So out on the resource table, in addition to Douglas Osling's story, there are some pages about our elected officials who need to hear from all of us that it's important that it not just be Kitsap County that's looking at this issue. And by the way, I was told by the Oslings yesterday that Kitsap County leads the state in mental health work at the moment. But the rest of the state is lagging sadly behind. So please take a look at who in your area you can contact and let them know that we want this to be a statewide mandate. Now, I really didn't come here tonight to make you sad, but these are powerful stories. And the thing that struck me about these stories is that there is so much life in them. But these stories open up wounds, some old wounds, some new wounds, to many of us in the audience, of people we have loved and lost. I am now going to introduce to you Susan Dobson, and I'm going to tell you another serendipitous story. But first, I want you to know that in the audience tonight are two counselors that are, as we say, standing by. Carol Pendleton and Victoria Hemstraw have graciously agreed and have worked with me these last weeks to be available to anyone in the audience who would like to speak after the show or later. Susan also will be available after the show. We want to be fully aware that what we are experiencing here tonight, when the lights come up and the show is over, those wounds don't necessarily heal immediately. So these people will be available, and we do have some private rooms where you can talk if you would like to. So, my serendipitous story. I got to have my play performed at the Group Rep Theater in North Hollywood and have Kevin Dobson be my producer. And then after the show, he came up to me and said, wow, that is the most amazing play I've ever seen. Well, not quite the most, but close. What else have you written? And I said, well, actually, I got this project, and it's called The Grief Dialogues, to which that serendipitous little Tinkerbell must have sprinkled some dust on Kevin. And Kevin said, really? Well, that's funny, because my wife is a grief counselor. So tonight, we are honored to have Susan Dobson, who is a certified grief recovery specialist, certified, by the way, by the Grief Recovery Institute of America. She's an educator, effective communication strategies, master addiction counselor, spiritual interventionist, and a radio talk show host, which we hope she will bring back very, very soon. She has a wonderful voice, and it's very soothing to hear. Her gift for healing and working with other people is a direct result of her life experience. Her connection to the Grief Recovery Institute, sorry about that. Her spiritual beliefs and practices, and a strong foundation in a 12-step program. And quite frankly, having lived in Los Angeles for many years, she also credits a long-term marriage to a well-known actor, her 3 children and grandchildren, as part of her gift. I would like you to welcome one of the few Hollywood couples that I know that have lasted so wondrously long. Please welcome Susan Dobson.
everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth. You honor me. You honored me by inviting me here and with your kind words and introducing me to your congregation of wonderful, beautiful friends. The stories we've heard tonight are heartbreaking. And I'm a bit overwhelmed, to be honest with you, and I have lost no words. Okay. I almost lost what I wanted to say. That would not be good. Not that I'm ever at a loss for words. My husband might tell you. By the way, my husband and I will be married 49 years come next April, God willing. And that is quite a milestone when it comes to Hollywood, as they say. Not without its ups and downs, but here we are. Grief. Is there anyone in this room who has not experienced grief of some sort? Is there anybody in this room who has not had their heart broken in some way? And what do we do about it? You know, the one thing that's never talked about in society and that we are guaranteed is death and dying. There's no books on, well, they're on now. They're on now, but they weren't until Kubler-Ross came around and she opened the door to so many of us about death and dying. And I am here today representing the Grief Recovery Institute of America, and for which I've been trained and certified to hopefully help people who are suffering in their grief to move beyond grief. Because there is a process to it. There's a process to grief recovery, but not a lot of people know about it. Isn't that interesting? How can that be? And what I want to share with you tonight, I'm not here to lecture you. One of my things that I do is I give lectures and workshops around the country on grief recovery. And I will have available for you, I'm sorry, these books were supposed to be here for this weekend, but they're not. You can get them on my website. I have pamphlets out there on grief recovery that please pick up before you leave. And this is one of the most formidable books, informative books on grief recovery, and it's the book from which I work, my workshops. And I would like to, the page is missing, it's not missing, I just lost the, anyway. What I want to share with you tonight is a few things about grief recovery. What is the definition of grief recovery? Simply defined, grief is the normal and natural reaction to significant emotional loss of any kind. While we never compare losses, my loss is never bigger or worse or more than yours. Any list would include death and divorce as obvious, painful losses. Our list also include many others like retirement, moving, pet loss, financial and health issues, among many others. The range of emotions associated with grief is as varied as there are people and personalities that we heard here tonight. There is no list of feelings that would adequately describe one person's emotions, much less an entire society. Grief is individual and unique unto oneself. As every relationship is unique, so are the feelings and thoughts each person will have about the relationship that they had been altered by death, divorce, or for other reasons. The problem, what is the problem? While grief is normal and natural, most of the information passed on within our society about dealing with grief is not normal. It's not natural or helpful. Grief is the emotional response to loss, but most of the information we learned about dealing with loss is intellectual. Intellectually, we understand what happened. Intellectually, I understand my daughter-in-law died. Intellectually, although it took me, like Susan, many more years to understand that my daughter had a mental illness, I understood it intellectually. But the journey from my head to my heart is a long way off. And there's not a lot of information out there. The majority of incorrect ideas about dealing with loss can be summed up in 6 myths, which are so common that nearly everyone recognizes them and thinks that this is the way it should be. Most people have never questioned whether or not they are valid, and yet they suffer. The misinformation is best described in the following way. 6 myths. Time heals all wounds. Thank you, that's correct. I've spoken to many of you since I've been here, and I've only been here a short time. Some of you have experienced deaths 10, 20, 30 years ago, and the pain is still palpable. So that's myth number 1. Grieve alone. Be strong. Be strong for your children. Be strong for your wife or your husband. Be strong. Don't feel bad. Really, what am I supposed to feel? You know? Replace the loss. It was just mentioned tonight. And I love there's lots of fish in the ocean. Well, I wasn't looking for a fish, you know. And keep busy, of course. Distraction. Distraction. Well, just looking at the myths list, Time Heals, creates the idea that a person just has to wait and they'll feel better. Is anybody in this room waiting and they feel better? I don't think so. We have known people who have waited 10, 20, 30, even 40 years and still didn't feel better. And we know that they would tell you that not only had they had time not healed them, but that it had compounded the pain. The other 5 myths carry equally unhelpful messages. The solution. Recovery from loss is accomplished by discovering and completely all of the undelivered communications that accrue in relationships. I'm going to repeat that because it's very important. Because grief is about uncommunicated feelings, words, communication. And we are all advised to let go and move on after losses of all kinds, and most of us would do that if we knew how. Well, we are taught how to acquire things in life. We know how to do that, but we're not taught how to what to do when we lose things, when our emotions are involved, when our grief is grieving, when our hearts are broken. So, before taking actions to complete, it's important to look at and often dismiss some of the ideas and myths we have tried to use with loss, but are not working. And I'll just take a few more moments because the Grief Recovery Method Guide for Loss is a choice to recover. You see, things don't change, and my grandmother was great at saying, you know, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Sounds so simple, right? But the fact is, if we don't take an action to change something, it just stays the same. As it is with grief, it just doesn't go away. We need to complete the incomplete. And there's a process in doing that. Recovery means feeling better. It doesn't mean forgetting, but it means completing the incomplete. And sometimes that means we've said things that we wish we didn't say. We didn't have the time to say things we meant to say. You know, it involves all of those memories of could'ves, would'ves, and should'ves. And yet in grief recovery, there is a way to complete that. And grief, I've said before, is the normal and natural reaction to a significant emotional loss of any kind. Grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who has always been there only to find when you need them again, they are no longer there. I can remember for I don't know how long after my mother died, going to the phone to call her. Or thinking, gee, I gotta tell my mom that when I get home. She would just, you know, and that went on and it went on, and even still today. My mom lives in my heart. I don't live in the grief of the loss because I have completed that what was incomplete when she died. And that means I got an opportunity, a second chance, to do what I hadn't done when she was alive. And now today, I live with the memories that are happy and healing and loving. And I will just let you know of all the losses that we don't think about. We think of grief as death and dying, but the death and dying, there's death, of course. And then there's divorce. Our society today, the statistics with divorce are off the charts. Retirement, moving, loss of an animal, a pet, financial change, loss of health, legal problems, empty nest, end of addiction, starting in school. We live in a society that moves so fast that I have to tell you something. You know, life happens and we move on. And we don't ever get to process our feelings, our pain, our grief. And what do we do with it? I have to tell you something. If we don't take an action to heal it, it chases us, it follows us. And what we do is then we stuff it. And what do we stuff it with? We stuff it with alcohol, we stuff it with drugs. Or we go to the doctor and we tell the doctor that we're feeling this, we're feeling that. Because, you know, it comes and becomes something other than just grief. It becomes physical, it becomes palpable. Because we've never addressed what it is. And so, those are the things that we get to do in grief recovery. If you are unwilling to think or talk about someone who has died, or express feelings about a loss, perhaps your grief is incomplete. If fond memories turn painful, you may be experiencing unresolved grief, incomplete communication. If you want to talk only about the positive aspects of a relationship, if you enshrine the person, you may be incomplete, not living in the reality of what was. Wanting to talk only about the negative aspects of a relationship might be unresolved grief, what we often call the bedevilment of incomplete communication. And unresolved grief may be at the root of any fear associated with the thoughts or feelings about any relationship because it changes everything that we believe in. So the grief components, and I will close with this, are 5. One is awareness that an incomplete emotional relationship exists. See, you can't get into a solution unless you know what the problem is. Bottom line. And then, what does that mean? And 2 is acceptance. What is my part in this grief? I can't tell you what your part is, but my part in grief recovery is putting you on the path where you do the work. I only facilitate and show you the way. And then the 3rd is recovery components of amends, forgiveness, and we write significant emotional statements to bring completeness to what I was talking about, the incompleteness of saying those words we wanted to say, or apologizing for the words that we did say, and we shouldn't. And then the forgiveness is a big part, is a huge element. It's forgiving ourselves. You can't forgive another person unless you first forgive you. So in all of this, we must look at our partner and then forgive ourselves and forgive others. And then the 4th is the action to do it. Again, it gets down to, and that's what my workshops are about, is taking the action to do something different. And 5th is the moving beyond loss. Moving beyond loss. So that the bottom line is if we stay in the past, there's no recovery. If we live in the future, or what could have been, should have been, or would have been, we lose the precious moments of the here and now that we're in. And we watch our life pass on. And that doesn't have to be. So moving beyond loss means saying goodbye. Saying I love you, and I miss you, and I thank you for all that you gave me, and that you live in my heart. And the last, and not least of all, is that love is the product of truthful communication. And so, I thank you again, each and every one of you, for allowing me to partake in this tonight. This is a marvelous, courageous, noble adventure. And thank you for bringing it to us. And I hope to be a part of it in the future, and anything I can do, I'm of service. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, tonight's a little different than the normal stage production. And tonight will include a film, a screening. In fact, one of the reasons this is a private event is because we are about to see something that, well, it's private. And I want to introduce these next two people in the same serendipitous nature of the rest of the Grief Dialogues. And I want to start by saying that some of you may have been realizing that I never brought up my family so far, other than my mother and father. And just so that my husband Scott doesn't think that I forgot him or that he's going to get off scot-free, no pun intended, I wanted to take a moment to thank my family, who, particularly Scott, who stuck with me all this year where I've done absolutely nothing but this project. But my sons, Alexander and Spencer, have had a great part in this too. What you're about to see, the film, by the way, and those of you who know Alexander will smile at this, when I became the executive producer on this production, he suggested that I start a production company called MAMSH Productions, because MAMSH is his nickname for me and has been since he was 2. Jesse and Emily came to me through our son Spencer and his girlfriend Jordan. As I understand it, at a holiday party last December, Jesse and Emily, who was Emily's friend of Spencer's girlfriend Jordan, were talking about the upcoming year and what they wanted to do. Spencer and Jordan were planning to move to Memphis, where Jordan would become a teacher, would teach for America, and Spencer would be unemployed for 20 minutes. And those of you who know Spencer knows that's about all it took for him to land the perfect restaurant job in Memphis, Tennessee. However, at that fateful party, Jesse and Emily talked to Jordan about what they wanted to do. And what they wanted to do is to create a film around an emotion. And that emotion is grief. And of course, Jordan said, "Oh my gosh, you gotta talk to Spencer's mom." And in January, I was privileged and honored to meet Jesse and Emily and their youthful talent in our home, where we started to talk about a film that would be perfect to show in relation to the Grief Dialogues. And we had a deadline. Our deadline was to be part of the Houston Death Salon. Now, I hope you have an opportunity to check out our website, the Grief Dialogues, and we have partnered with the Order of the Good Death. Caitlin Dowdy, who wrote the book Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, is a member of our esteemed advisory council. And I am working with Professor Lindhorst from the University of Washington School of Social Work, where we will present in September 2017 the Seattle Death Salon with the Order of the Good Death, which is a great announcement, by the way, and I'm very pleased that the University of Washington School of Social Work has agreed to do this with us. So back to the film. We wanted a film that said, that again, opened the dialogue, because that's what tonight's about. It's about opening a dialogue. When we realized that we had just a short time to come up with script and film and casting and everything you can imagine, Emily said, you have a script in your bank of scripts for the Grief Dialogues that really speaks to me. And that script was LA 8 a.m. And luckily, it was written by a friend of mine, Mark Harvey Levine, who lives in Pasadena, California. Emily and Jesse took the script and made it come alive. Now, if you knew Mark Harvey Levine, you know that he's a nice Jewish boy from Pasadena who gets very nervous when his creative juices and his creative work are even remotely touched. And he only wanted it to be, we had to practically draw blood to swear that we would honor his creative play. I am honored to say that Emily and Jesse have done just that with great honor, and even Mark Harvey Levine said, "Wow," when he saw this film. I also want to point out that through Emily and Jesse's leadership, a film that should have cost considerable amounts of money actually was put on so reasonably with a volunteer crew, mostly volunteer crew, thanks to their dedication to this project. So ladies and gentlemen, I am personally proud to present the very first private screening of 8 a.m.
It's 8 a.m. on a bright and sunny Saturday morning. This is Kevin Kirkwood, who believes everything can be reduced to numbers, even himself. He's 5'11", 180 pounds. He contains 4,421,523,000 cells. He's about to eat a bowl of Froot Loops. Froot Loops is a registered trademark of the Kellogg's Company Incorporated and are fortified with 11 essential vitamins and minerals. This will be the 127th bowl of Froot Loops that he has eaten in his lifetime. It contains 10% of his daily requirement of zinc, 15% if milk is added, and he plans to add milk. He finds numbers comfortable, ordered, neat. With numbers, life is not messy or chaotic. This is Paige Kirkwood. She does not believe life can be reduced to numbers. She does not believe life should be neat and ordered. She does not believe in keeping the cereal in the little cellophane bag provided by the Kellogg's Company Incorporated.
Paige? Paige!
Yes?
Did you take the cereal out of the little cellophane bag?
I cannot tell a lie. I did take the cereal out of the little cellophane bag.
Why would you do that?
It makes it too slow to pour.
Yeah, it all came right out.
See?
How many times have I asked you not to do that?
3.
Now I've got Froot Loops all over the place.
It's a crisis.
I just wanted a bowl of cereal. All right, that's all I wanted. Is that too much to ask?
I guess so.
There are other numbers in the world he believes, numbers that are unavailable to him, the countdown numbers. For instance, when Kevin woke up this morning, the song playing on his clock radio was Pictures of Matchstick Men, the top 40s hit by the status quo. There's a certain specific number of times he will hear Pictures of Matchstick Men again. Every time he hears it, that number goes down to 1. Until finally, though he will not know it when it happens, one day, he will hear that song for the last time, and never hear it again. Every time he hears a song, its number ticks down 1. One day, all the numbers of all the songs will hit 0. And then, the number of everything he will ever do will hit 0. The number of spoons he will pick up. The number of shoes he will tie. The number of times he will say the word look. The number of breaths he will take. The number of beats in his heart. And then, all the counters will align at 0, and he will die. But that day is far off, and those numbers are not known to him now.
Loops.
They know it is not about Fruit Loops.
Good. I don't want to fight about Fruit Loops either.
But they do not know what they are really fighting about. Kevin wonders how many fights they've had, and how many more they will have, and whether the frequency of fights has increased over time, how you might go about calculating that number. Paige wonders if this is the man she wants to spend the rest of her life with.
Look, I have to go meet with the graphic designers.
Okay. Let's just drop it.
Fair enough.
See you when you get back.
Okay.
Number of spoons Kevin has left to pick up, 43,409. Think of that, all those spoons. Number of spoons Paige has left to pick up, 0. She picked up her final spoon last night at 9:27 p.m. Distracted by the Fruit Loop fight, she will fail to see a car turning left in front of her, and will be killed in 17 minutes.
See ya.
Okay.
Number of kisses between Paige and Kevin left, 1. If he had known that would be the last time he would kiss her, he would not have used it as an opportunity to express his unhappiness. But he did. He does not know that he will never have another fight with her. She does not know that he was, in fact, the man she spent the rest of her life with. He has 36 minutes left before he gets the phone call. He will forever associate the taste of Fruit Loops in his mouth with that phone call. Number of bowls he will eat after today, 0. But this number is not known to him now. Right now, he's just having a bowl of cereal and thinking about numbers on a bright and sunny Saturday morning at 8:12 a.m.
I know I've seen it on the laptop and so forth. That was amazing. And you know what was the best part about it for me? It celebrates life, and it reminds all of us that people in our lives are precious, and it could be the last time we see them. And, you know, there are a lot of arguments, but most of the time they are over Fruit Loops. I also want to point out that you may have noticed at the end of the film, there were several local wonderful people, Mary Scribner, Ann Barker, Beth Morgan, Kate Ruffing, I think I missed a couple there, but that have donated to create the film that you see here tonight. Oh, and my good friend Susan Breidenbach, who I've known since I was 7. Now, also breaking from what you would normally see at a Grief Dialogues performance, we do have a few announcements. The first announcement I want to make is that the film you just saw that we created expressly for the Houston Death Salon, and now that film we hope to submit and plan to submit to other film festivals. But the original film festival, Houston Death Salon, has notified Jesse and Emily that they have won a spot in that screening September 17, 2016 in Houston, Texas. So they've already won their very first award. They are here. Can we take a moment to bring up lights? Thank you. Jesse and Emily, please. One of the most exciting moments for me was when I got to come to the set. Now, they started early in the morning. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I got there about 9:30. But, you know, I was there. And I was so excited. And the first thing Emily did was find me a chair. And she said, "We've got to find the executive producer a chair." And I was like, "Wow, is the executive producer here?" And then Emily goes, "That's you." Oh, yes, right. So I'm happy to say that one of my dreams came true. I actually got to be involved in a fabulous film. So that's the first announcement. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Gigi Michaels. I have misplaced my notes about Gigi, but that's okay, because this is a woman I only met in October through a mutual friend, Bonnie Wallace, who I know a lot of you know here on the island. Gigi has been my right hand, my left hand, and most of my brain cells in this past year. She is, for lack of a better term, the digital strategist. But I really want to call her the queen of the Grief Dialogues. The website, its development, the beauty of it, this is all Gigi. When I called Gigi at Bonnie's suggestion, and I told her what I needed to have done, and I wanted a top-flight website, Gigi said to me, "You do know my story, don't you?" I didn't. But when she told me of her personal loss, the loss of children, I realized that I had not only found the perfect person to build this website, but also the perfect person to help me and guide me with this project. So please welcome and honor Gigi Michaels.
Planned actually for this evening, but there didn't seem to be any time for me to speak this evening, so I'm feeling really bad now that I pulled it all out, Elizabeth. So, and I guess we're not doing that either. Okay. So I'm going to speak to you just a little bit about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a pioneer in near-death studies and the author of the groundbreaking book on death and dying, where she first discussed what is now known as the Kubler-Ross model. She wrote 24 books in all during her lifetime, which have been translated into 34 languages. In her expansive body of work, she discussed care and support for the seriously ill, their families, the grieving, and all who struggle with the effects of loss. She was one of the best-loved and the most respected authorities on the subjects of death and dying, and is credited with writing one of the most important humanitarian works on the subject in the Western world. After her passing in 2004, her son Ken founded the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in the spirit of carrying on his mother's work. The Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation participates in initiatives and collaborates with individuals and organizations which provides support that enhances, fosters, or furthers compassionate care, communication and acceptance, awareness of the power of love and forgiveness as an important component of one life's journey, the wishes of the end-of-life patients, advocacy, support, participation in legislative issues, resources, and education with respect to grief. And tonight, Elizabeth, I'm happy to announce that the Grief Dialogues have been endorsed by the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation. And that endorsement reads as follows. The Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation is proud to offer its encouragement, support, and backing to Elizabeth Copland's Grief Dialogues. Elizabeth's project is filling an important needed voice in the grief community. In our society, most people have a difficult time facing death. The Grief Dialogues approach through the use of plays as an art form transcends the everyday and gives us a much-needed vehicle with which to help people and communities better understand the grieving process. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's body of work started the conversation on grief. Elizabeth Copland is asking you to share your story and join the conversation. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Gigi. I'm sorry I made you cut your presentation there.
That's okay.
This is the point in the program that will not occur at normal productions. However, I'm going to turn the program over to Susan Levy. I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who has contributed for the film. And I also want you to know that people may be asking, well, how did it get this far? And I want to personally thank my husband, Scott, who agreed somewhere along the line the last year that this would be a wonderful retirement project for me and that I could use our hard-earned retirement money to make this happen. So I'm going to ask Susan Levy to come up here for a minute and talk to you a little bit about the program and what we do next.
Trust me. So it's about a year ago that I met Elizabeth through the 10-minute play that she did, and then there was a posting on Facebook about some stories about death, and I wrote her back and we met. And along the way, she asked me to share some of the stories that have happened to me because I belong to a pretty rare club. In the past 8 years, I've had 2 children and a husband died. And I do come from one of those families, though, who was pretty good at always talking about death as a part of life. And I feel very fortunate. But as many of us know in this room, not everybody's that fortunate. In fact, most Americans aren't. And so to start this conversation, we started tonight, but to continue it in theaters across the country, we hope to have your help. And if you want to be producer, a part-time producer, in all kinds of levels down the road, to even volunteer. There's some cards out there for you to take a look at. I feel very fortunate because I got to meet Governor Booth Gardner right after the law had passed for death with dignity. And I asked him, how did it go in his own family? Because, he suffered from Parkinson's disease. And he said, well, we're like any other family. Not everybody agreed. But because we were able to talk about it, finally one of my sons and I decided we were going to lovingly agree to disagree. And he died not too long thereafter. And he really gave us a gift. And I hope that on the, at the end of life Washington resource table, that you'll get one of these values sheets because it helps you to continue the conversation in your own family, maybe even start it with your loved ones. So please join us, we love it. And even if all you have to offer is an opinion about tonight to Elizabeth, feel free. Thank you.
Okay, whoops. I'm not quite sure what happens next, but I think I know. Okay. So hopefully tonight you'll have a chance to take a look at the infographic that Gigi did that talks about the process and how the Grief Dialogues is becoming an artistic movement. There are 20 finalists whose work we have selected, the Advisory Council and myself and Wesley Fouget selected 20 finalists whose works will be like modules when we actually perform a full production. I also wanted to point out tonight, Babs Lindsay is in the audience. She made the trek from Seattle, and she is one of our wonderful playwrights that we will be doing a production in Seattle in the near future, and her play will be part of that performance in Seattle. Oh, there's one other thing I want to announce, actually. Kathy Sparkman is here from End of Life. Kathy and Sally McLaughlin, who's the executive director of End of Life, introduced me to Peg Sandine with the Death with Dignity National Center in Portland. And after taking Alexander back to college so he could start football season, all important, I had the honor of coming back here via Portland and had the opportunity to meet with Peg. And after a very short discussion, Peg said to me that the Death with Dignity National Center would also be an endorser of the Grief Dialogues. So, the last two pieces are truly from the show. I just want to say a couple of words about Wesley Fouget, who is the director of this piece. I had the honor of meeting him about a little over a year ago at Beth Morgan's house, and he is one of the most incredible, youthful, interesting, talented young directors I have ever met. And that's saying something for someone whose first Broadway show was Applause with Lauren Bacall in 1971. Wesley has been both my muse and my guider, and the man who knows everything there is to know about theater. I'm going to bring him out on stage in just a moment to finalize the show and have him talk a little bit about the next piece. I also want to say that I hope you have enjoyed this evening in some part. I know it's been very emotional. I hope that you will tell us what works, what doesn't work, and please understand that in a regular production of the Grief Dialogues, it will be full theater, it will be full presentation, such as film. At the end of the show, I will meet everyone outside, because these next two performances are really the heart and soul of the artistic movement of the Grief Dialogues. And so I'd like you to meet Wesley Fouget. I have to tell one quick funny story though. Okay. Wesley is, he has his own theater group, Forward Flux. Hope you hear about it, it's fantastic. But Wesley has also agreed and has been working very tirelessly and closely with me. He is the artistic director for the Grief Dialogues. Thank you very much, Wesley. And several months ago, I was interviewed by a national theatrical publication. And before I returned the reporter's call, I called Wesley and I said, okay, what should I say and what shouldn't I say? And so we talked a little bit about it, and then Wesley, you said to me, Elizabeth, you're going national a little too fast. And my response was, Wesley, you're 32, I'm 62, it's now or never. Wesley Fouget.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I'm really excited and honored to be a part of this evening. So, part of a director's work, right, is bringing incredible stories to the stage. When you have an incredible story like we do tonight, my job is so easy. And when you are working with amazing actors, actors, storytellers, my job is even easier. So I'm really honored to introduce you to one of the pieces that's going to be included in the full-length evening of the Grief Dialogues, which is called Out of Time by a Seattle-based playwright, Rachel Atkins. And we have the amazing Kiki Aba and Carolyn Marie Monroe here tonight to perform it for you. It's going to be followed immediately by a song written by, called Go On, music and lyrics by Carla Rose Fisher, who's here tonight, and a video montage by Steve Stoley. So all in all, it's about another 12 to 13 minutes, so thank you so much for joining us. I'll just say that this is a really special project. My grandmother passed away earlier this year, and I wasn't able to be there at the funeral, and it was really sad to watch how she had to just slowly wither away. So I would like to honor her with tonight's performance. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Anything?
No.
Did you try?
I tried.
None of them?
None of them.
I don't think anyone's coming.
I am sure that's not true.
What makes you so
We
optimistic?
called 911 more than once.
So did a lot of other people, I bet.
Right.
We can't save all of us.
Should we call them again?
Who knows if all those messages even get to whoever's down there?
Right.
How long has it been?
I don't know.
Look, all that time to evacuate the lower floors? There's no way they're getting to us now.
Maybe they don't think there's anyone still up here after hours.
Shit. Look, maybe we should go down on 9/11. The people
No,
that went
this is
down.
not 9/11.
No.
My name's Angie, by the way. We should at least know each other's names, right?
Miranda.
Yeah, I've been answering the phones all day.
Stacy answers the phones.
Stacy's on vacation.
What?
I'm a temp.
You're kidding.
Lucky Stacy.
I mean, not that I wish this on Stacy, but a temp?
It's okay. It's not your fault.
I helped you late. You could have been gone by now, but I stayed late, so you had to stay late.
No.
Bullshit.
No, really.
Bullshit. You could be gone. You could be safe.
No, really. I stayed late so I could use the copier without anyone seeing. Resumes. I hate temping.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Shit.
You know what is really ironic about this? I am the last living descendant of one of the survivors of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
The what?
It was this factory 100 years ago where all these young women worked. Girls, really, immigrants.
A sweatshop.
Yeah, they kept them all locked in, and there were no fire extinguishers or anything. So when a fire broke out, most of them just died.
Didn't they have fire departments back then?
Yeah, but the building was too tall. Not tall like this one is, but tall for the time. So the fire ladders didn't reach to where the fire was, and these girls basically had no way out.
This is a great story.
Oh, well, it has sort of a happy ending. I mean, they improved the fire codes and stuff after it happened. Exit signs. I guess it's not.
Are you sure that you tried that?
Yes.
Oh, my great-grandmother. I was named for her, actually. Angela Angelina.
How did she get out?
She climbed down the fire escape.
Yeah, that's not really gonna work for us.
Well, it didn't really work for her either. The fire escape didn't even go down to the street. It wasn't on the outside of the building. It was this rickety thing on some inner courtyard over a skylight to the basement, if you can believe it. So she broke a window and climbed into an empty warehouse a couple of floors down.
Then what happened?
The door was locked, of course. The place was closed. It was Saturday after closing time.
Right.
She and this one other girl were in there. They saw the fire escape collapse with all these girls still hanging onto it. And finally, the fire department made it inside and heard them calling for help and got them out. My grandmother, her daughter, used to tell me these stories how she got down to the street and looked up and saw all these girls, her friends, up at the windows with fire at their backs.
They jumped?
People were holding out nets, but the velocity, they went right through.
What about the other girl, the one she was with?
She survived. Oh, but her sister died. Not my great-grandmother's sister, the other girl's.
In the same fire?
Yeah, she worked at the factory too. My great-grandmother went with this girl, Sarah, to find her sister's body after it happened. She could only identify her sister through a repair she had made to one of her shoes. That's how badly she was.
Maybe we should find something else to talk about.
Some of the workers escaped by going up to the roof. Most people had tried to go down, right? But some of them went up, and these students from NYU in the next building over helped them across.
That's not really gonna work for us either.
This girl, Sarah, and my great-grandmother were friends for the rest of their lives. We went to citizenship school together, danced at each other's weddings. There was just this big commemoration for the 100th anniversary, but now I'm the end of the line.
I'm sorry.
I always thought I'd have kids, you know, or a kid to pass the stories on, but oh God, do you have kids?
No.
Not married or anything?
It's complicated.
Right.
I don't usually have.
Never mind.
He died. Shit.
It's okay, you don't have to tell me.
It's okay, I mean, what else are we supposed to talk about, right?
I don't think this is...
I always tell people that I'm widowed because it sounds better. Somehow it's okay if we were married. Justified. We were going to get married. We just weren't yet. And then he died before we could. I don't usually blurt this out to people anymore.
It's okay.
I mean, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with him, and then one day he's just gone? That's not supposed to happen.
It was sudden.
Yeah. It was a few years ago, and people think I'm over it. Or I should be, but I'm not. And here's the thing. Everyone's fine with a funeral and everything. Flowers, casseroles, and sympathy for your lost cards. But then after a while, they forget about it. And they want you to forget about it too. Because it's too much for them to deal with. And when you don't, when I didn't, honestly, I've been hanging on by a thread half the time, and they practically had me on a suicide watch, so this is just a lot to deal with.
Maybe we should call some people.
What?
to say goodbye.
Oh my God.
We should.
Phones are dead.
Cell phones?
Shit. I forgot. My battery was low and I meant to bring in my charger this morning, but forgot. It's dead.
Use mine.
No, I can't.
No, really, you should let them
No,
know.
I mean, the one person I call is my sister, and she screens her calls, and she won't recognize her phone number, so she won't answer the phone. And I wouldn't want to leave her a voicemail because then she'd just be killing herself for the rest of her life. That she didn't pick up the phone.
Just try.
No, I'm telling you,
Try.
voicemail.
Okay.
What about you?
No. I don't.
No one?
I don't think I can.
Okay.
You know, the Triangle Factory fire was the worst workplace disaster in New York until September 11th. This one probably won't even come close, will it?
What do you think happens after?
Oh, God.
I never used to think about it, you know? I mean, why should I, right?
I don't think I can talk about this.
I'm sorry, I know, I don't want to. Even if it means, you know, I'm not ready.
Me neither.
It's kind of a stupid thing to say, right? I mean, who would be?
I guess somebody might. Somebody who felt like they'd really lived their life.
If they thought that, then what would they be doing working here?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were resumes. There's nothing wrong with
I
one.
just thought I still had time.
I know.
I thought I still had a chance. And look at my great-grandmother. She escaped that fire, and she lived her life to the fullest and left this legacy behind. Do you know what I am leaving? Nothing.
I'm sure that's not true.
I don't know how this happened, that I wound up so alone. I really don't. And now
Oh, you're not alone right now, are you?
it's too late.
If I could talk to my sister, I'd tell her.
Me too.
Did you say that those girls jumped?
Yes, but these windows
I know! Never mind. Just tell me the story.
Yes. Okay. Okay. They all held hands. 4 of them. All at the same time.
All together.
Long dresses, skirts billowing,
Fire at their backs.
fire all around them.
Angie,
Miranda,
are you with me?
I'm with you.
You're staring down the bad news, hoping in vain to sort it out. Friends offer up their You drive away.